Philadelphia Eagles football is back, Lincoln Park is back, and you know what? We're about ready to talk about some video games. That sounds like a pretty fantastic day to me. And hey, I also have a little bit of news for pretty much everybody in this video. For you Xbox fans out there, we have an interesting showcase to talk about that they just announced, and I think this one could potentially bring some heat. Then for you PlayStation fans, Sony just accidentally confirmed the PlayStation 5 Pro, and hey, even for Nintendo, well, I mean, those Switch 2 rumors continue on. So let's just go get right into things, starting off with a brand new game that will be out technically in a few days, being Space Marine 2. Now, I've had this game on my radar just because it kind of reminds me of Gears of War. And if you know anything about me, I'm a huge Gears of War fan. So I've been fairly optimistic about keeping this one on my radar, and that's why I'm happy to say that its reception has been more than just a little bit positive. Not only does it currently have an 84 overall score on Metacritic, but its advanced access, which gives players the perk to play a few days early, has been very successful. You can already see here on Steam database that Space Marine 2 jumped straight to 134,000 concurrent players, which is very impressive, especially considering, again, this is only its advanced access. Its official launch is still set for September 9th, and I imagine we'll see yet another jump when it officially releases. Looking at Space Marine 2, though, I just think this game really pops off screen. The first thing that really struck me about this game is just the sense of scale and its presentation. It really brings you into its war-ridden universe, and, now that we know the gameplay is well executed thanks to its reviews, this might quietly be one of the better releases for 2024. It might not be all that quite much longer, but again, if you're interested in Space Marine 2, it will be out in just a few days on September 9th. Now, speaking of good games this year, though, one of my personal favorites so far has been Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown. It might not necessarily have been the big AAA Prince of Persia that a lot of fans were maybe hoping for, but honestly, I just think it's one of the better Metroidvania games available in a very crowded market. And with some amount of luck, it might still get a little bit better thanks to its new story-related DLC. You can see here, thanks to Hasdor, that Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown's Mask of Darkness DLC will be out on September 17th. It'll have new biomes, new boss fights, new enemies, new traversal elements, and 6 hours of gameplay. Now, just to kind of put that in perspective here, some of the most praised Castlevania games like Symphony of Night and Aria of Sorrow are just a tad bit longer than that. They're right around 7 to 8 hours, so, 6 extra hours for a Metroidvania that was already pretty long as is, I think is a pretty good bonus here. And also, this is a fairly affordable DLC at just $5. Now, of course, that's not the only fun that you can have in September because, like I said earlier, Xbox just announced their own showcase for TGS 2024. Now, I remember about a month or so back, some people were kind of freaking out that, Xbox wasn't going to show up at TGS this year. Do they just not care about Japanese games anymore? But as I said back then, maybe just go and hang on. If it's anything like last year, they might announce a TGS showcase last minute, and of course, that's pretty much what they did once again. You can see here that their Xbox Tokyo Game Show 2024 broadcast will stream on September 26th at 3 a.m. Pacific Time, with content from Xbox Game Studios, Activision, Blizzard, Bethesda, and a lineup of games from third-party partners primarily based in Japan and across Asia. Now, just kind of looking at some of their past TGS showcases, I think these are absolutely worth paying attention to for really 3 different reasons. One is that if you want updates for some of their first-party games like Starfield, Diablo, Indiana Jones, or even Call of Duty, they will have some updates for games like those at this showcase. But more importantly here, as the theme is for this showcase, if you are a fan of Japanese games specifically, Xbox tends to have a few surprise Japanese announcements every year at TGS. Now, some of that will be in the form of Xbox Game Pass inclusions, so if you're an Xbox Game Pass subscriber, you might want to go ahead and at least look at the highlights. Last year, they announced the Phoenix Wright trilogy and Like a Dragon, A Man Who Erased His Name as Xbox Game Pass games. So, I mean, they'll likely have a few more of those Game Pass announcements here, but I think what I'm personally more intrigued about is if they can continue their trend to announce some big surprise Japanese games on stage. In 2022, they announced Ni no Kuni and Danganronpa. And then last year, they announced Octopath Traveler 2. Seriously, if you haven't already checked that game out, please go do so. It's an amazing turn-based JRPG. But it's kind of that relationship there that I almost wonder if we'll see anything else from them at this year's TGS. Will we get another Square Enix Xbox announcement this year? I mean, there has been a lot of noise around Final Fantasy 16 for Xbox. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen at TGS, but what I can say here is that I'm fairly confident that Final Fantasy 16 will eventually be announced for Xbox, just because Square Enix has already suggested that is indeed in their plans. So it's really just kind of a matter of when rather than if by this point. So, who knows? Maybe TGS could be that place. Again, I'm not saying that it will be there, but it is one of the many, many possibilities. Now, a couple of other games that I could see here at this year's showcase is one, ReFantazio. That's the next big Atlas game. And then also the new Yakuza game. Sega and Xbox have had a great relationship this generation, and we do know, based on the information that we have, that the next Yakuza game will be announced at this year's TGS. So maybe they can get those games on their stage. Now, I'm sure there's going to be some smaller Japanese games as well, and a few surprises along the way, but, that's what I'm trying to say here. These Xbox TGS events are quietly solid showcases worth keeping an eye on, especially if you like Japanese games, but as always, I got your back. I'll give you the highlights just in case you miss it. But that's not all here. September seemingly is just kind of loaded with different announcements from all of the big three. And one that we've pretty much heard about since last year is the PlayStation 5 Pro. Again, kind of like the Final Fantasy 16 Xbox situation, I think there's enough evidence here by this point that yes, it absolutely does exist. And if for whatever reason, if you just still don't believe it, well, Sony seemingly accidentally confirmed it themselves. Now, this was done through their 30th anniversary announcement. By the way, big congrats to them. The fact that PlayStation is now 30 years old is honestly kind of unbelievable to me. Little Jay Wood was only about 3 years old when the PlayStation 1 released. Yeah, I'm getting old, guys. But nonetheless, here they revealed this 30th anniversary graphic, and at first glance, it doesn't necessarily seem like it's all that big of a deal. But knowing the internet, it didn't take people long to start to look into this graphic a little bit more. They started zooming in on the background to look at all the different icons included, and you can see here, there's a PlayStation 5. It's clear as day. It's got that one line stripe right down the middle. But wait, there's actually another icon that's also clearly a PlayStation 5, but with one key difference. It's got 3 stripes. Now, at first, that might not seem that definitive, but the thing is that this kind of lines up with a leak that we've recently heard. Bilbo Coons from D Labs, I believe it was just last week, claimed that the PS5 Pro has 3 stripes. And, well, here we are. That's what we are seeing in this graphic. So, yeah, this absolutely fits in with that leak. And by all indication, Sony pretty much just confirmed the PS5 Pro. And the fact that it's included in this graphic in the first place, that more than likely means that, yeah, an official announcement will follow shortly after. In fact, according to Tom Henderson over at Insider Gaming, he said in March of 2023, Insider Gaming reported that the PlayStation 5 Pro was in development and could be released in late 2024. According to sources, as of late, the console is scheduled to release sometime in November. So yeah, with it likely being just 2 months out, an official announcement has to be sometime imminent. That way they can get pre-orders up sometime soon. I think the only thing for me is just that I'm cautiously curious about its price. This generation has played out a lot different than how the PS4 Pro released last generation. Back then, the PS4 Pro was able to launch and replace the price tag for the original PS4. But considering prices are rising this generation, it's going in the wrong direction here. So I don't know if Sony can come out and do that with the PS5 Pro. So with that in mind, this thing could potentially be very expensive, especially if you want a disk drive as well, which will cost an additional, I believe it's $80. Now, one last thing that I want to talk about here, though, is the Nintendo Switch 2 rumors, because they are kind of out of control right now. It just kind of seems like every single day there is a new rumor about the Switch successor. And we saw that happen earlier this week when Christopher Dring basically said that there are some rumblings about something Switch 2 related in the month of September. Well, Bill Kuhn responded to that and said that's not actually true, because according to him, what everybody's been hearing about is actually a Switch OLED bundle that includes Mario Wonder. Now, if that's the only Switch hardware reveal for September, that's actually pretty hilarious to me, because it just kind of shows you how people can get things twisted behind the scenes, and that at times causes these big rumors like this. So I mean, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I wouldn't be surprised if a Nintendo Direct happens sometime in September, just because historically this is the month for their big directs. But I'll just kind of say this. I wouldn't go in with the expectation that the Switch 2 will be there. I just think that it's kind of important to temper expectations a little bit. I mean, there's 100 different rumors about the Switch 2 every single day. So, if it happens in September, that's great. I would be thrilled if that's the case. But maybe just go ahead and temper expectations a little bit, especially with Bill Kuhn, kind of dousing the fire here, if you will. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode. But as always, hit that subscribe button if you like this type of content. And until next time, peace out. Oh, and by the way, go Birds.